Welcome to Top Tier Wrestling, your ultimate destination for all things AEW and WWE. Whether you're a hardcore wrestling fanatic or just a casual viewer, we've got you covered with the latest news, in depth show reviews, and our unfiltered opinions on everything happening in the world of professional wrestling. Join us as we dive into the high octane action, dramatic storylines, and backstage buzz of AEW and WWE. Get ready to step into the ring with us and stay on top of the wrestling world. This is Top Tier Wrestling.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, TTW proudly brings to you its podcast champions of the world, the Road Dog Jesse Josh, the badass Billy Dawn, the Top Tier Podcast. Welcome, everyone. On today's episode, we'll
My
be discussing AEW Dynamite Grand Slam from Wednesday, September 25th. And let me just tell you, it was a banger.
It was. It was. But speaking of bangers, that intro though,
I do what I can.
you meant it. I felt it in my socks. Nice.
Excellent. That's where you want to feel it, all the way into
sock
the
rumble.
socks. Into the socks.
Nice.
Yes. So AEW decided that they wanted to basically give away a pay-per-view for free.
Yeah. Again, they do that a lot.
Again, yeah, and wow, did AEW Dynamite Grand Slam not disappoint?
Yeah.
It I don't want to skip to the end, but it was outstanding.
Yeah.
We just had a stacked card, and we opened the show right out the gate. They're going after Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness's rivalry match.
Yeah.
And it
Shocked
ended up
was I.
being pretty fantastic. So they opened the show with Nigel making his way to the ring for the first match of the night.
Mm.
And they've left it as a big question mark. Will Bryan Danielson be cleared to perform? And Nigel gets out into the ring, and pretty much he's wearing the shirt that says, Danielson's afraid of McGuinness. And they immediately, like, after Nigel hits the ring and we're waiting for Bryan Danielson to come to join him, they start playing his what is it, the Flight of the Valkyries variation, his normal theme music, and he doesn't come out. And so we're like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
and you see Nigel going, oh, of course, Brian, he's a coward.
Of course.
And he basically tells the ref, that coward Danielson, of course, wouldn't show up. I insist that you give me a 10 count and that Bryan Danielson surrender his AEW World Championship. And I'm like, okay, the 10 count seems reasonable, but I don't know about surrendering the World Championship because that was never on the line in this match. He did say that. And even the announcers were like, well, I don't know about surrendering the championship. So in relatively dramatic fashion, referee Paul Turner does indeed start to do the count out, which I'm here for it, but it's a little weird that the match hasn't started and you're counting him out. But I guess maybe that's the first time we're seeing a process for a wrestler no showing a match that they're for in real time.
Yeah.
And he gets to about 5 or 6 when the final countdown starts playing and Danielson starts to make his way down to the ring, and the crowd just loses it, right? Because they were certain to make sure, they were like, if he's cleared to wrestle, if Big If, and it was good. It was a good way to build like some drama just right out the gate for this match.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so Danielson ends up making his way to the ring. The crowd, of course, is popping like crazy for him. And I mean, of course,
I was singing along. I'm not gonna
as
lie.
much as anything, yeah, I think they're popping for the final countdown. Um,
In GL, I was singing along. I know right
yeah,
now. The second you said the title of the song, it's in everybody's head that's listening right now. I know it is.
yep, it can't not be.
Yeah,
Um, so the match starts off, and this is a clearly a match between two technicians, but you start out with some strikes between both men, and
yeah,
it's also like a really long series of chain wrestling right at the beginning between like counters to hammer locks and double wrist locks.
hmm
And sometimes that can look really boring, but with the added heat of like McGuinness having talked so much shit about the rivalry he had with Brian,
yeah,
every move they're doing has a little bit of like extra oomph on it.
yeah.
Um, Now, I will say this: throughout the match, Danielson's strikes looked phenomenal. For
They
whatever
did.
reason, McGuinness's strikes looked a little bit soft, like they weren't quite connecting. Like I don't know why that was the case, but
hmm
that was the only spot. Because for the most part, McGuinness looked outstanding. Because that
Yeah,
was the other, like that wasn't the storyline question, but the question everybody had was, you know, after so many years not being in the ring, is McGuinness going to be able to go?
yeah.
And spoiler, he absolutely can.
My man was hitting
McGuinness,
lariats. He was hitting lariats that gave Hangman the shivers backstage.
you're not wrong. I mean, some of the rebound lariats and
Yeah,
counter lariats were absolutely insane.
they looked
Um,
good. So that looked good, but you're right. His strikes, and I think I even mentioned it when we were watching it. That his strikes looked like meh, and then Brian or Danielson, his strikes looked like he meant that. Like he meant that
yeah,
shit. He was
yeah.
going in on
Every
and the elbow. Oh my god, the thing that Blackpool does. The elbows across the chest. Um, you know what I'm talking about.
I
Uh,
do. I think they call them the anvil. Yeah, the anvil elbows,
yes.
where they lock
Thank you.
one arm in kind of like a hammer lock, and then proceed to drive the elbow down into the
Yeah,
collarbone area. Yeah,
yeah. Nigel did it. It looked like he didn't really mean it. Danielson did it. He meant every piece of that. Like
yeah,
whenever he does that, it really does look like ouch. But there were some holds that Nigel was doing that was like,
yeah.
Nigel showed us stuff. He showed me stuff that I have never seen before in the ring.
Yes. Just to focus on Nigel a little bit, and I'm not trying to make it lopsided against Danielson, but Nigel
No.
is the unknown quantity for many people watching this. We've seen Danielson's offense. Yeah, I mean, he is a striker. We know the label lock, several of his submissions, the Bisaiko knee. We know that. So we're
Mhm.
looking at McGuinness for the first time at some of the stuff he's doing, and his offense favors like a whole lot of lariats. Um, he also had some really great like in-ring psychology storytelling moments. Like he went after Brian Danielson's right arm early on as a striking point, and I think it's because he has a submission move, the London Dungeon, I think it might be called, or something like that. And that move is a particularly high kind of like shoulder lock,
Mhm.
and so he's working the arm immediately, and so he's slamming Brian's arm into like the ring steps. He's just attacking the arm every which way, and there was one point where he went to get into a strike battle with Danielson, and in response, Danielson then proceeds to try and like European uppercut him with the arm that's been being thrashed, and it,
Mhm.
it was very clearly like he was baiting Danielson to do just that. And then he points at his head like, I outsmarted him. And I thought that was really good. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of like, haha, good trickery. Because you didn't necessarily see that that's where he was going with it. Like, it's like, oh, and one, back to another strike battle in AEW, they use that quite a lot. But this actually had a little twist on it in that he tricked Danielson into hurting himself by striking him with that blow. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. And there was a point, and I think you were getting to this, where Danielson threw McGinnis into the corner, and McGinnis has this technique where he'll do a headstand in the corner, and then when people approach him, he kicks them. Well, the first time he kicks Danielson, and the second time when he goes for the kick, Danielson catches his foot, and then kind of throws his foot back up in the air and hits him with a back chop across the midsection, which forces McGinnis, and this is the thing I don't think either of us have ever seen. McGinnis ends up crumpling backwards and ends up kind of doing a back bend
Yeah.
on the top rope with his feet on the ring post. And Danielson then proceeds to grab McGinnis's head and puts him up in like what is essentially the German suplex back bend. Again, this is all happening on the top rope for McGinnis.
Yeah.
And sticks his head right on the top turnbuckle upside down and then proceeds to twist his neck. And we're like, is he trying to kill McGinnis?
Yeah. We were like,
And
we
I was like,
can't
this
have
is
this.
insane. And then he goes in to try and he strikes McGinnis again at that point after letting his head drop back down off of the top turnbuckle. So he's still in the corner though, and he back chops him, and that forces McGinnis to flip over the back of Brian, and McGinnis then grabs Brian and like. I'm trying to remember how he set it up exactly, but he kicked him in the back and then he hit him with like a sit down lariat.
Yeah. Oof. And
And
boy, did he sit down.
it looked brutal, especially considering right the history of Danielson's neck issues, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like oof. And that was just one of the things. Like that was
Yeah.
something where McGinnis showed us something we hadn't ever seen before.
So
And
at first
then
we were like, Danielson, are you trying to kill him? And then shortly after that, we were like, McGinnis, are you trying to kill him?
yeah,
Because that sit
and
down lariat looked like that looked painful. Again, all his lariats looked ouch.
they really did. They looked brutal. And there was one point where he went for, I'm going to call it the London Dungeon, but maybe I'm misspeaking. I'm sure people could correct me on that one. But I mean, this is my first time honestly seeing McGinnis in a full singles match.
Yeah.
I never followed what happened between McGinnis and Danielson back in their feud in Ring of Honor. So I'm seeing a lot of new things for the first time. But this shoulder lock, he got it in on Brian, and then he comes around behind Brian. Brian is sort of in a sitting position with his elbow and shoulder up over his own head, and he puts McGinnis places both knees in the middle of Danielson's back and leans back on this thing, and it's like he is trying to rip Danielson's arm completely out of socket right
Yeah.
now. And it looked brutal, and it was really fantastic. And just to hit on one more kind of a highlight move that McGinnis did, there was a point where McGinnis was in the corner and he ended up finding a way to get behind Daniel Bryan, like again, kind of over the back of him. And he puts him in a reverse neck lock, kind of like the setup for the DDT that Sting likes to do, the Scorpion Death Drop.
Right.
And he in a reverse suplex kind of fashion flips Bryan up, and that forces Bryan to end up between McGinnis and the top rope, where he's just kind of hanging suspended between. And then he goes for what do they call it? Is it the London Bridge or something like that? Like he's got a couple of London moves, but he basically does this huge cutter on Danielson after setting him up that way, and it looked brutal.
Yeah.
and it was really fantastic. McGinnis was absolutely bringing it to Danielson, and the way the match ends up closing out is after what had been a fairly big banger. Um, you have McGinnis delivering the hammer and anvil elbows to Danielson, like you mentioned before, and follows it up with a neck breaker, and then that leads Danielson to kind of flipping it around and getting McGinnis into the hammer and anvil elbows. And you're absolutely right. Like the difference between what McGinnis's looked like versus Danielson's was pretty stark. Like Danielson's were
Yeah.
like with prejudice. And they get into a brief strike battle again with some chops and kicks, and McGinnis ends up hitting Danielson with a knee, but the way they fell was in such a fashion that McGinnis had his arm draped kind of between Brian's legs, which allowed Brian to pretty easily flip around and cinch in the label lock. And they fight back and forth in the middle of the ring for a good bit. There was a point where McGinnis, I think, attempted to roll Brian up for a pinning combination to try and get
Hmm.
to force the escape, but
Right.
Danielson maintained his shoulders like being kind of rounded, so that never really panned out. So McGinnis attempted to like whip out of it again, but Danielson hung on, and it ended up being a situation where it forced McGinnis to tap out. But he didn't tap out before he yelled loudly "fuck you" to Danielson, and then taps out.
No,
And
he
it
said
was
thank you.
he did not say thank you.
I didn't see
That's
thank
what the
you. The announcer,
commentary team suggested that McGinnis
they
said.
suggested
But
that my man said thank you, but I don't think thank you starts with an F. Maybe I don't know.
oh, maybe it's the British accent. Maybe it was
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
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 okay, got you, got you.
that's what it was. Surely.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know
But
about that. Thank you, guys. Mm-mm.
but that just set the tone for the rest of this night. And that was an absolute banger. McGinnis really impressed me in that match.
He looked
And
great. Yeah,
maybe people who are old hat, like with this rivalry, who were aware of it, are like, yeah, we knew
yeah,
McGinnis could go, but like it was a first time for a lot of us that have been watching since AEW, and we
yeah,
didn't know McGinnis can go. Now we know McGinnis can go. He looked excellent. Again, outside of him maybe needing to have some more convincing strikes in the ring, and I don't know how much more in ring work McGinnis intends to do.
yeah,
Um, but uh, other than that, he looked outstanding. That's really
yeah.
the only place where I would go for some improvement.
And if
Um,
you say if I never see him wrestle again, it was a privilege. Honestly, it was
truly,
fantastic. A great match.
yes. So, I'll I'll be happy to say it. Thank you, Nigel. Because if that was a
Hmm.
one and done, then thank you for that because it was outstanding. And you and Danielson just put on a banger like right out the gate.
Yeah,
So Nigel after tapping out, Nigel just sort of rolls out of the ring, and Danielson's doing his celebration in the ring, holding his AEW World Title up, and then we hear Christian Cage's music hit, and he starts to make his way out with his contract that allows him an AEW World Championship match at any time and place of his choosing. And just as he pulls out a pen to sign the contract so that he can cash it in, out of the back, Kip Sabian sneaks up behind him and pulls the pen out of his hand before he can sign it and runs back off behind, back into the
yeah.
back. And Christian's sort of looking dumbfounded for a second before he turns around and follows him out. And we follow Cage kind of, back through Gorilla and the curtain, and we see Pac and Claudio Castagnoli just standing there, kind of silently mean mugging the whole situation before they sort of nod with approval. And
Yeah,
that is how we kind of end the initial segment of this Dynamite Grand Slam
yeah.
with a huge match and then some fun shenanigans.
Which I am okay with. I was surprised that Christian Cage came out there by himself. I thought for sure he'd
right?
have the entire
The
family.
entire patriarchy, yeah.
The entire family. Um, bleh, love him.
Yeah, but I mean, I think at least my dislike for Christian Cage is part of his heel work, right?
Oh yeah, yes. I don't
So,
actually hate Christian Cage.
yeah,
He's so good at being a heel that he makes me roll my eyes so hard. Like
so
it's
hard.
just, shut up, Christian, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Uh, but I'm
It
also
was
glad that he
indeed.
didn't. Yeah, I'm also glad that he didn't come out there and take the belt. Um, what happened after that? What was it? FTW.
Yes, the
Was
next
it the
match up is we see the hook signal. And
yes?
so the cold-hearted, handsome devil Hook makes his way
Oh,
to the ring. And
yep,
this is
yep,
going to be a match against the Undisputed Kingdom's Roderick Strong for the FTW Championship match.
yeah.
And the heat coming into this match is that for a couple weeks now, um, in a match that I think involved, I think, was it members of the conglomeration and the Undisputed Kingdom? Hook had gotten a tap out victory by cinching Roderick Strong into the Red Rum. And it was contentious because the ref missed that Roderick Strong's foot was underneath the bottom rope. And so
Mm.
Roderick's been going, that would never happen in any other match. And my foot was underneath the rope, so it's all blah, blah, blah. So he's absolutely been singing the song that Hook can't beat him,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a fluke and it was BS. But then everybody's like, yeah, but you were still tapping out, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So this match starts off with Hook making his way to the ring, and then shortly thereafter, Roderick Strong follows suit with both Matt Taven and Mike Bennett from the Undisputed Kingdom. And I was like, oh man, because it's FTW rules, right? So it's kind of a lawless match, or I guess an extreme rules match. So it's completely legal for Matt Taven and Mike Bennett to get involved. And so I was like, oh man, is this going to basically be a 3-on-1? The answer is no, because Hook pretty early on just demolishes both Matt Taven and Mike Bennett with like kendo sticks and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we actually end up with is a fairly solid match between Hook and Roderick Strong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Strong reminding us why he's called the Messiah of the Backbreaker. At one point, I think Taz, and it hurts me to say this because it was actually quite clever coming out of Taz, um, but he said it's the Messiah of the Backbreaker versus the Sensei of the Suplex, and I thought, okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty clever. That's pretty good. I liked it, and it really did become like Suplex versus Backbreaker, and it was really solid. A nice match with the action that you're hoping to see. Um,
Man, those
with
steel chairs. Buh.
add some steel chairs and some kendo sticks into it for some extra flavor. Although there was a couple of chair spots that were insane.
Yeah.
There was a spot where Hook suplexed Roderick Strong between two chairs, kind of set
Yeah.
up facing each other. And I don't know about you, but it looked to me like Roderick didn't quite land where they hoped he would.
Yeah.
So he hits the middle side of his back on just one of the chairs. The other one, I guess, kind of got pushed out of
Oof.
the way. And so it made for a very kind of awkward, instead of flatter landing than you were hoping for. And it
Yeah.
looked mean. But then what he turned around and did to Hook looked meaner. He essentially got him up in a fireman's carry after that and threw Hook essentially chest and stomach first, right onto the upper corner of of a chair that was sitting there, and that just looked like it should completely break Hook's ribs.
Yeah.
And so there was that bit of viciousness, and those spots looked really, really nasty. And then afterwards, I believe Strong, after throwing Hook midsection first, nails him with his running knee. But then Hook ends up grabbing hold of him in Red Rum, and that forces the tap out from Roderick Strong.
Right. Right.
And this time it's not contentious at all. Like, he was nowhere near the ropes. There was no any of that. So Hook just straight beats Roderick Strong in the ring. And so
Yeah.
we have Hook maintaining that he is still the FTW championship, and Roderick Strong takes the L. But it's what happens next that really put this match over for me. I mean, it was a good match, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
this
Right.
added like a cherry on top that made this a fantastic bit of honor and storytelling.
Yeah.
After the match, Strong gets into the ring with the Undisputed Kingdom and offers his hand to Hook. And understandably, while Hook is standing there opposite Roderick Strong in the Undisputed Kingdom, there's a bit of hesitation, but then Hook ultimately takes Roderick's hand and shakes it, and both men briefly hug before the Undisputed Kingdom and Roderick Strong exit the ring, having shown respect to Hook for a match well fought. And one, you love to see it, right? You love to see that kind of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
But it was really especially surprising coming from Roderick Strong and the Undisputed Kingdom. And we were both kind of caught off guard by that. Like they didn't grab his hand and then proceed like a 3-man beat down on him. What? Are
Yeah.
they trying to turn the Undisputed Kingdom and Roderick Strong face? Or
Yeah.
but
I was
that
very
was
happy about it.
It was great, and then that's
Yeah.
not where it ended. Then Hook rolls out of the ring, and Shivani is there to kind of like give him a post-match interview briefly, and Hook basically thanks everybody, and says that it's been a great run with the FTW Championship, but all good things must come to an end, and everybody's like, "What?"
Yeah.
And Hook then announces that he is officially retiring the FTW Championship, and that it was in kind of this same area many, many years ago that Taz birthed the FTW Championship. And so Hook then takes it and hands it over to Taz and hugs his father. And so you had this massive moment between father and son, where the son, who was, I believe, possibly maybe the longest reigning FTW champion, hands the championship that was invented by his father to his father and says, "This is yours," and then hugs him, and then Hook, then exits, and Taz is left looking incredibly emotional. And it was just a completely unexpected and fantastic moment of honor. Like, it was unexpected that Roderick Strong and the Undisputed Kingdom would end the match with a handshake and a hug and leave, and no shenanigans. And then it was even more unexpected that the FTW champion would retire the championship and hand it back to his father, and we'd get this father-son moment between Hook and Taz. In particular, because like Hook especially is extremely stoic and doesn't say a whole lot. So it was really unexpected and fantastic. And so here we are with two matches that could have been the main events all on their own of any show that
Yeah.
AEW does. Like, pay-per-view, television, doesn't matter. And we're like, oh my God, Dynamite Grand Slam is blowing the roof off the place. I'm
Already.
floored.
Already.
So it's like, where do we go from here,
Yeah.
Well, the answer is we go to the AEW World Tag Team Championship match between the Young Bucks, Matt and Nicholas Jackson, the current reigning and defending AEW Tag Champions, versus the AEW International Champion, the aerial assassin Will Ospreay, and the proto star with the Don Callis family, Kyle Fletcher. And right out the gate, like just on its face, we've got the Bucks and we've got Fletcher and Will Ospreay. And so it's like, oh, I see. So we're now on to the easy 6-star match of the night. Like
Yeah.
we just know based on who's in it that this is going to be the match of the night. And well, spoiler again, it did not disappoint.
No.
Um, after the Bucks and Osprey and Fletcher all make their way down to the ring, we immediately start with what's going to be a hot match. I'm not sure I can go like play by play because the amount
No.
of things that happened in this match would just be that would be the entire podcast to break it down
Yeah.
because
Uh,
it was very much high spot after high spot after high spot and surge after surge with this
like go
particular
it
match.
if you did not see this match, if you didn't watch Dynamite, uh the one look, they were all good. I would say I would watch the whole thing if I were you. But if you had to pick one match, this is the match that you should watch. It was, I mean, you expect it to be phenomenal. Like Will Osprey, I'm so up
Hmm.
on this guy. I think I was telling Josh when we were watching this that it's like I feel like a kid again. You know, like I'm 5 years old again. Watching this guy wrestle. Like he comes out and I'm like immediately like, "Ah," you know, like
Yeah,
nothing but
and
screams and
mhm.
he's always amazing to watch. And him and Fletcher together, they work so well together, and it's always just man, it's just really really good to watch. So I was already excited. And Young Bucks, I've said it before. Josh has said it before. I'm sure we have no problem saying it again. I feel the Young Bucks are quite possibly one of the greatest tag teams of our generation. Um, they're amazing. They're phenomenal. Heels, faces, doesn't matter. They get in the ring and they do stuff that just makes tag team wrestling a whole top tier, a whole nother level.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself. Osprey is something else.
Yeah.
And just to kind of run down some of the high spots in this match, um, there was a point that Osprey was setting up for the Hidden Blade, and I think Matt. Let's see. No, Nick sees it coming and tags in Matt Jackson, and then they hit Osprey with an assisted sliced bread, and then they go to set up the EVP trigger, and Osprey like out of that ends up like kipping up out of it. Like it's a way I've not seen the EVP trigger countered before, and then runs away from both of them, and then ends up hitting a double Oz cutter off the middle ropes on both of them. And that was just insanity. Uh, there was another point where there was an exchange where, like, I want to say Nicholas hits a Hurricane Rana on Fletcher, and Osprey ends up coming out of that and hitting a 450 splash on Nicholas, and then Matthew comes out of nowhere to hit Osprey with a very mighty Canadian destroyer. But then coming out of that Canadian destroyer, Osprey immediately drills Matt with a hidden blade, and like everybody is on the ground after like hitting like massive moves.
Yeah. It was
And then
so good. That it was so good.
yeah, and then they kind of recover from that, and the next big high spot is the Young Bucks set up Kyle Fletcher on the apron for a TK driver, and they hit him with it. And it's like, what? What? How do you even?
Eh?
And so everybody's laid out from that, and then once they recover, you end up in a situation where Osprey and Fletcher in the middle of the ring catch both of the Bucks, and they do a double Styles clash. Like both of them hit the Styles clash on each of the Bucks, and unfortunately, it only gets a 2 count. But I mean, this match is just insane.
Yeah.
And I think Osprey drills Matt with like a hidden blade, but it's broken up by Nicholas. And then Nick hits a bulldog on Fletcher, and Fletcher sells the bulldog out of the corner ridiculously well. Like this, he
Yeah.
landed like the bulldog nearly on top of his head, and we were like, ugh, because it's usually sold very flat. And Fletcher was like, nah, that's not good enough. Here, just look like you give me a concussion. And the Bucks try and set up for the TK driver again, but Osprey this time hits Nicholas with a bulldog and gets to the top rope before hitting an assisted pile driver with Fletcher on Matthew. And there was a point where later then Fletcher takes one of them, I think Matt again, to the corner and just drills Matt with a top turnbuckle brainbuster, which I feel like we just mentioned on the last podcast, talking about Sami Zayn having to, come up with even new corner arsenal to fight Gunther. And this looks, I mean, that move just looks brutal. No, like every time I see it, it looks like, ugh,
Yeah.
And so they're just throwing out everything at this point. And it's just getting to where it's like these two teams aren't going for a pin. Somebody's going to have to like be dead in order to stop this because they have whipped out like everything.
Yeah.
And I guess at this point Don Callis agreed because there's a point where I believe Fletcher flies out for a suicide dive. I think again on Matt. I think Fletcher and Matt were kind of the pair up. And Callis walks over to Fletcher while they're all at ringside and hands Fletcher the screwdriver, the same screwdriver that we've seen Don Callis trying to hand everybody.
Yeah.
And Fletcher looks like he's going to go for it, right? Like he's not like, I'm not going to descend to this level. He attempts to go for it, but it's Osprey who ends up grabbing Fletcher's arm and preventing its use. And so now we've got this drama, and Osprey then takes the screwdriver out of Fletcher's hands and literally walks the screwdriver over to the ref and hands it to him. And this distracts the ref long enough for Nick to smash
Fletcher.
He smashes Fletcher with the belt.
Yeah. And then they hit him with the EVP trigger. And that's that, Matthew.
And that's that.
Yeah.
So we end up with another situation where, this is the clash that's been between the Callis, the Don Callis family and like Will Ospreay, and it's that Ospreay doesn't want to have to resort to this to win the match. And unfortunately, this in fact cost them their opportunity because the Bucks don't mind. The Bucks totally were willing to hit like both of them with championship belts to try and get this victory.
Yeah.
And so you end up with, like you said, Matt and Nick Jackson catch the EVP trigger on Fletcher and secure the win. And afterwards, you end up with this look between Osprey and Fletcher that was tense. It looked kind of like Fletcher was saying, why, And and Osprey just sort of looked down, at the question like, ugh. But
Yeah.
lots of tension there now. I'm curious to see what the fallout for that is going to be between Kyle Fletcher and Don Callis and Will Ospreay. But it was absolutely the match of the night. I mean, goodness gracious,
Without question.
it's getting to be where like any match Osprey is in is going to be like a 5 or 6 star or more match, and this gave you everything that you thought you were going to see and then some. I mean, the Young Bucks are some of the most ridiculous, over the top performers in in the world. Actually, I was going to say AEW, but I might as well just make it broader. I mean, they're insane, the Young Bucks, and Will Ospreay is. Unironically, I'll absolutely give him the moniker the best wrestler in the world right now. Like
Oh, absolutely.
I cannot think of anybody amongst the wrestlers that we know of that could believably say that more than Will Ospreay.
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
and Kyle Fletcher has just become the juggernaut. Like, I was never that big on him in Aussie Open. Like, I wasn't like, these guys suck. But Fletcher has really stepped up to being a main eventer. Like, he is insane now, too. So
Yeah.
this match just shined up everybody involved. Everyone looked amazing. And it was fantastic. Definitely a top tier match for sure. Um, so after that match, we then head to the back where Renee Paquette, is interviewing
Really?
freshly squeezed Renee Pickett, freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy, and the Ring of Honor World Champion Mark Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly, and Rocky Azucar Romero. Essentially the conglomeration plus Rocky Sugar Romero. Um,
Digger Romero.
and I say that because what they did next was turn it into just the conglomeration, because Cassidy hands Rocky Romero a conglomeration T-shirt and
Yeah.
invites him to join the faction. And it seems like he accepted. Briscoe then goes on to cut a promo, and this is Christmas. Just give Briscoe
Every
the mic
time,
as
yeah,
much
come
as you
on.
want.
As much as you want. Every time he talks, man. Every time he talks. It's a it's Christmas. You got it right. You said it right the first time. I don't know why I'm trying to make it different, why I'm trying to add to it. It's Christmas. It's chef's kiss. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's worth adding to. Like, it can't be overstated just how much of a joy Mark Briscoe and his character and just
Yeah.
listening to him is. Like, he is outstanding. And he goes on to say that while everybody else seems to be wearing conglomeration T-shirts, he wore a Dim Boys shirt because they're only 5 miles away from where the last Briscoe brothers match was held. And we were like, oh.
Yeah.
And that's why he's wearing the Dim Boys shirt. Just a reminder of, Jay Briscoe. And then before Mark Briscoe goes on to like completely go off the rails like he does at the end of his promos, Kyle stops him and says, "Wait, Mark, what's the word of the day?" And Briscoe says, "The word of the day is vociferous." And then proceeds to be as vociferous of a human being as you possibly can
As
be.
he possibly could, yes.
And closes out his promo, with the going crazy rant, and it's excellent.
Here for it.
Here for it. And the next segment after that is Tony Schiavone at the top of the entrance ramp on the stage. He introduces Prince Nana because this is where Prince Nana was going to give us an update on the status of Swerve Strickland.
Yeah.
And Schiavone pretty much straightforwardly asks him, how is Swerve doing after losing the AEW World Championship to Bryan Danielson and facing Hangman Adam Page in a lights out steel cage match. which is rough. I mean, it was a rough time for old Swerve.
Yeah.
And Nana reveals that while Strickland is fighting hard every day, he's still not yet cleared to compete. And he's then, going on like, but whose house? And the crowd's just eating it up.
Right.
In fact, it shouldn't be glossed over that Prince Nana came out with the full like intro for Swerve Strickland, and it was just Nana dancing, and the crowd lost their minds. Like they were here to see Prince Nana do the dance, and
Here for it.
so
Yeah.
they gave us that, and it was awesome. But as he's attempting to, cut a promo for Swerve, we hear a voice from the back, and everybody, including Nana and Shivani, kind of look around, and out of the back steps none other than Montel Vontavious Porter, MVP from the WWE.
That's right. Oh man, you made it. You made it rhyme.
I do what I can.
I thought you must have burst out into a rap. Oh shit! But no, he comes out.
I'll
He comes.
spare everyone on that one.
Oh no, he comes out, and the audience like loses it. Then the MVP chants start, of course. But I mean, he proceeds to cut a promo on Swerve and mainly on Nana, where he goes down the list of Swerve's accomplishments, and then right after
Mhm.
he goes down the list of what's happened to him recently, his losses, and he says, "I don't blame Swerve." Oh yeah, then he asked, why is the man who did all these things to him still walking around?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then he says, I don't blame Swerve, I blame his management. And the audience is like, oh
Yep.
snap, right? Everybody suddenly became that cat that does the side eye.
Oh, yeah, shots fired.
Like,
Like
whoa.
MVP just shows up to make a play for, arguably one of the top stars of AEW. Like
Yeah.
who his Nana has been a part of this ride with Swerve, like from the whole time that Swerve's
Yes.
been on his meteoric rise, and throughout Swerve's storied AEW championship run. Um,
Yes.
and
So
just
he cuts.
wow, the cojones on MVP.
Yeah, that's what I kept saying when I was watching this. We're watching this, and I'm going, the balls on this guy, the pair on this guy. Because not only does he cut a promo where he talks about Swerve being good or being the best and his management being crap,
Yeah.
but then after insulting him, offers him his business card to give
Yeah.
to Swerve.
Yep. And now we know why MVP walks to and from the stage with a cane. It affects his gait that he is carrying these massive iron balls between his legs.
Yes, yeah, now I know. Now I know this whole time it wasn't the Miz. Miz does not have the massive balls. No, 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 no.
No.
MVP has them. Yeah, and that's why he comes out with his cane because yeah, baby. He talked all kinds of shit and then casually strolled on out. It was good. It was good.
Yeah, and he poignantly said, he wants to talk to Swerve about business, which is clearly a reference to the Hurt Business. And so now I'm not certain because the reports we had heard was that MVP might be heading to AEW, and we had heard that he might be, getting his hands on, Bobby Lashley and trying to reform the Hurt Business over in AEW.
Mhm.
Now, I had also recently heard that Lashley isn't doing any wrestling stuff. Like what did I think it was you that told me he's doing some kind of touring around and something not
Oh yeah,
wrestling
yeah, yeah.
related.
Yeah, he's doing something for children. Like a show for exceptional kids.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder if those stories aren't a work. Like, are we actually going to see the Hurt Business build up over here in AEW?
Yeah,
And
I don't know.
man, could you imagine a Hurt Business that involves Swerve Strickland? Goodness.
Yeah, I'm here for it though. I am here for it. I don't know, man. If Bobby Lashley shows up, I'm done. I'm done. Like, okay,
Well,
goodbye.
because I
I'm done.
mean, we were looking at this months ago, and we were like, MVP's contract came up, and um, Shelton Benjamin's no longer with the company, and Bobby Lashley's contract then came up. So, like, you got several of the components. Um, you could very easily end up having all of them come to AEW and reforming the Hurt Business.
Yes, do it.
And, listening
Let's.
to what MVP just said there didn't dissuade me from that. Now,
Yeah,
now
he
I'm
even said the
thinking,
word.
yeah, now I'm thinking that the initial reports of that happening are actually true, and that anything that was talking about it not happening were a work or maybe just wrong. But we'll see. Time will tell. But this definitely raises some interesting questions, and MVP absolutely hasn't lost anything with his capacity on the microphone.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a fantastic segment, and I'm incredibly curious to see where they end up going with that. Because it could be something real incredible. I mean, Swerve Strickland is already an incredible story in AEW, and
Yep,
nothing
yep.
MVP said was wrong about studying the illustrious
Nope.
championship run and rise of Swerve Strickland. That's true. Like, that is how you home grow somebody into a main eventer. And
Yeah,
the rise of Swerve Strickland is fantastic, and I am just ecstatic to see where we go from here.
here for it. Absolutely.
Here for
And
it.
MVP does. I mean, he cuts a mean promo. He always has, but that one was probably one of his best.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm here for it. I don't really have much more to add to it. It was
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, moving on from that fantastic spot, we then get footage of AEW TNT champion Jack Perry driving over a New York bridge in his scapegoat mobile, and
I
that's
think
that. I mean,
yeah.
I guess it was
Excalibur
just
said
a
he was. Yeah, Excalibur said he was on the way to Queens. And then they used that to go to pose the question, of who would accept Perry's open challenge for the TNT title, on Saturday's Collision.
yep. So it's just a teaser for what's coming on the second half of
Yeah.
Grand Slam. And let me tell you, I'm hopeful that it will be amazing because Dynamite's was amazing. But ooh, what a tough act to follow! Dynamite did not mess around here.
Yeah,
Um,
it did not.
Now
Now,
I say that
oh,
as we
can we
come
just
to, I
yeah,
think
go
we
ahead.
had the same idea. If you'd like,
Ah!
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I was about to say now, if while you were watching this show, you needed to get a snack, go to the bathroom, maybe answer an email for work that you received, um, walk your dog, maybe he or she, you know, has to go to the bathroom and you've been putting it off because the show is just so good. Well, you'll be happy to know, and I'm sure if you watched, you probably did this. You probably did all those things when it came to the next match, for the AEW Women's World Championship between Mariah May and Yuka Sakazaki, I believe is her name. And
Indeed.
uh, for the first time, for the first time, last night, uh, that's this was the low point. For the first time, I was watching the match, or watching a match and not enjoying it. Um, and I'm not. This is not to say that Mariah can't go. We know Mariah can go in the ring. Yuka Sakazaki is new to me, so I have no qualms about what she does in the ring. She looks pretty good. She's small. She's compact. But she's a little firebomb. I got no problems with these two ladies. For me, there just was no heat here, and I was confused. I mean, it almost felt as if this match was done as a favor to somebody. Honestly, because there was no heat. She kind of came out of nowhere. I'm confused as to why she came out of nowhere to challenge, like how she just got in line to challenge for the belt, while
Hmm.
there are other women backstage who I'm sure could have given Mariah a really good match. Like, I mean, I was just really confused by the choice uh, of Yuka. That's all. And it wasn't a bad match. Honestly, it wasn't a bad match. But we just saw Roderick Strong and Hook give us a match, a phenomenal match. We saw Danielson and McGuinness give us a phenomenal match, above average matches already. Just these are the two to open.
Yep.
We just saw the Young Bucks and Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher give us another amazing like tag team match, and then we come here. Hell, even the promos in between
Yep.
the match were top notch, top tier, if you will. And then we get to this match, which just was okay. It was an average
I
match.
I
It was
fully agree
short.
with you.
I mean, not much happened. There was no heat. At no point did I think that Yuka Sakazaki was taking this belt from Mariah May. Uh, at no point did I think she was going to give Mariah May a run for her money, no matter how, I guess, half-assed they tried to make her seem like she was a competitor, like a challenge for Mariah. I mean, they half-assed that for like I think 2 weeks before the match. Still, there was no heat there. No heat. I mean, it was okay. It was just an okay match, and
Yep.
of course, she got the Storm Zero at the end. Sakazaki did, and that was it.
Yep.
Mariah was about to work her over, and then Willow came out for some reason. She slides into the ring. Now I know her and Yuka are. That's her first name, right? Yuka Sakazaki.
Yuka. Yep.
Yeah. I know that they are friends, and I know that because they said that like once, like a week ago.
Yeah.
And
Suddenly, close friends out of one promo, and
yeah,
I think
so
that ties into the half-ass building of heat here.
yeah, and then Mina's music cuts in once Willow is in the ring, talking smack to Mariah, and I'm thinking I would have rather had seen that match. I'd rather see Mariah and Willow have a match. Like, why didn't they? I don't get it. Why? Well, Willow was obviously there. She came running out. I'm not sure why she wasn't the person that they were having this championship match with. But again, I just felt like they were doing a favor to somebody. I don't know who the favor was for, but there it is. But then Mina's music, Shirakawa, is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Mina Shirakawa comes out, her music, and after that happens, Willow is looking towards the ramp, the entrance ramp, and then um, Mariah hits her in the back of the head with the belt. The camera cuts back to Mina. She's looking like, "What's happening?" And then we see that Mariah has run out of the ring and she's running up the ramp to get to Mina, and she, like, straddles, or Mina straddles her, and they do this twirly spin. I don't know what's happening still. Then Yuka comes out of nowhere. She's running up the ramp to go after Mariah, and Mariah kind of puts Mina in between her and Yuka. And the whole time Mina's just confused, and the commentators did their very best to try to make sense of what was happening. They were basically
Yeah.
telling us what we were saying. Basically, Mina didn't want that. She didn't want anybody to be hurt or attacked. She was confused. You could see it all over her face or some shit like that. I don't know. Um, Long story short, it was a meh match and meh storytelling. There was never ever any heat. I've said it. I said it. I know before. I'm beating a dead horse at this point. There was never any heat here. Um, so it was just it's always been a throwaway match for me. It was honestly the match that, like, if you could take any match out of this, it would have been that. Like you that match could not have happened last night and nothing would have changed. We would have still had a banger of a show
Yeah.
with, I mean,
Um,
and I hate that I feel like every time I'm harping on a bad match, it's like a female's or a women's match, and I hate it. I hate it that I sound the way I sound, but I
well,
don't know what to
yeah,
say, man. It
yeah.
just out of all the other matches last night, that was definitely the low point. I just don't know what else to say.
It was, and if I may, I'd like to offer my thoughts on that
Yeah,
whole situation. Um, One, I fully agree with, like, why was Yuka Sakazaki just out of nowhere the number one contender? Like, we
yeah,
haven't seen her for a long time. She was injured with, I think they said, her ankle injury. And I know
yeah,
Yuka Sakazaki's been like part of AEW for a long time, but this was, I mean, it's been so long that, like, this was practically the first time I think either of us really took notice of her.
yeah.
Um so maybe this is a testament to a lack of strength in the division and the booking, perhaps, in the women's division. But you had Tony Storm hanging on to the women's world title, the AEW's top belt for the women's division, for quite a while. And then Mariah May wins it. And this was the conclusion of one of the most fantastic story arcs we've ever seen.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
now that Mariah has the belt, it's almost like they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if they're holding off setting up any meaningful rivalries until the inevitable return of Tony Storm. But I would think that women should be coming out of the woodwork and
For that
competing
belt.
hard for that belt because it's been tied up on Tony Storm forever, and now
Yeah.
here's Mariah May. And instead, we end up with random seeming challengers out of nowhere. And that's surprising because AEW typically tries to uh, go along with the. I know it's all kayfabe, but they try to stick to, like, who's got what wins and who is actually the proper number one contender. And I fail to see how a returning individual from injury is immediately thrust to the top of that chart.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, it felt very forced then. Like, okay, so how? And then the little bit of heat that they tried to give to this just felt very forced, and
Yeah.
it didn't. I don't know if it needed more build up or what, but I just didn't feel any kind of heat between Yuka and Mariah May coming into this match. And I'm not
Mm-mm.
saying you can't just have a match to have a match, but that makes this match a candle in the sun because, like you had stated, it's not that there was anything particularly bad about this match, but there wasn't anything particularly good about it, and it sits in a card of every other match being a main event match.
Yeah.
So it's mediocre by definition. And this is the Women's World Championship, right? Like, this isn't a
Yeah.
small potatoes, small stakes kind of a thing. And so there was no proper buildup for this. I feel like they're wasting Mariah May here. Like, this should be a huge spot. And not for nothing, Mariah May is one of their female talents that can really go in the ring.
Yeah.
Um, so it's unfortunate that this was what it was, but I agree with you. This was the weakest match of the night. And it didn't have to be a bad match. It just didn't rise to the level of every other match on the card.
Yeah.
It also wasn't a particularly long match, and it didn't do during the match. It didn't give us any kind of real, surprises or anything, and there was no heat between the two competitors. So this felt very much like a match. Like, I know this is Dynamite Grand Slam, this is a match that could have been any match on television. Like it could have been on Rampage. This just didn't have any of the oomph that every other match on the card had.
Yeah.
And there's some other stuff that I feel is kind of confused about the situation. Like I appreciate, that Tony Storm and Mariah May did their thing, but I would think now that they've done their thing, it would be a great chance for Mariah May to show us her stuff. And instead, I feel like parts of her identity as Mariah May have disappeared as she's slowly turning like even more so into Tony Storm, even to the point where she's not doing the Mayday as a consistent finisher, she's doing Storm Zero.
Yeah.
So is like Storm Zero her finisher now? Is it going to be like, when Tony Storm comes back, are they going to fight for who actually gets to keep the move? But I feel like Mariah May is being wasted here on a couple of levels, is the point that I'm trying to make. Like she's
And I
becoming
agree.
less distinctive as a superstar in this process, and her clout from that amazing, story arc between her and Tony Storm seems to be being piffled, and they're not setting up any new or very super intriguing rivalries. But unlike some matches where it's a weak match because the performers didn't do so great, I'm looking at you, Mercedes, and Britt Baker, and recently Hikaru Shida. This match, the performers did fine. It was the booking and the lack of any real intrigue or story that made it that, and I think they realized that because I think it was like not, but like a television spot before where, like you said, suddenly we're hearing that Willow is Yuka Sakazaki's like super best bud, and it's like, is she? Where did that
Yeah.
come from? And so much so that they used Deanna Parazzo and Taya Valkyrie to kind of make the point. And it
Yeah.
just felt very like, oh yeah, we've got to add some extra heat to this thing because it's actually really not that good.
And they were friends.
So you've got Willow who runs out and does not much of anything but take a shot to the back of the head with the title belt. And then you've got like Mina Shirakawa showing up, and it's like, like she's like halfway not that into whatever is going on with Mariah May. So it's like, well, then why did you show up? And so you end up with this whole confused looking sequence, like you pointed out at the end. Like the commentators are trying to tell us what we need to think about it because
Yeah.
it's not being conveyed very well at all by the people that are involved with it. So yeah, this was easily the weakest spot of the night, and I think it reflects some general weakness in the booking for the women, and that they don't apparently seem to know what to do with Mariah May, and it's just sort of wasting all of that momentum that her and Tony Storm built, and it's kind of piffling her title run. And that's all super unfortunate. So that leaves us with a relatively lackluster match on an otherwise nothing but main event marquee match card for the night. And so, again, like I said, candle in the sun, it just doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
So here's hoping that they can correct that. You've got some talents here that I think could actually really do something, and clearly, at least once in a while, they can really give a good story arc to the women. They did so with Tony Storm and Mariah May, but none of that was on display here.
Nope.
But moving on from that, we now come to a huge singles match between Darby Allin and Jon Moxley, with Darby's title shot at the AEW World Championship on the line. And here's a good example of what I'm talking about. Right? Here's where they're talking about who's the number one contender and who has a title shot. So much so that, in fact, that spot is what is the stakes on the line for this match. When we just saw a match where whoever was supposed to be the number one contender or properly have a title shot just didn't matter because they were like, and here's Yuka from nowhere to challenge the women's champion. So that shows you that inconsistency that I was pointing out. Like sometimes they're really serious about like who should appropriately, based on their win ratio and whatnot, be the next in line for a championship. And
Yep.
that's on the end of them showing us that, at least for the women, it doesn't seem to freaking matter. So fix that. Um, but moving on from that, uh, you have Darby Allin and John Moxley, and I'm thinking like I went into this thinking that this is going to just be an obliteration of Darby Allin.
Yeah.
Because John Moxley has been rolling around with this whole Moxley crew, and not for nothing, he's been coming out with Marina Shafir at least regularly, if not the entirety of what once was the Blackpool Combat Club. I still don't know if they are the Blackpool Combat Club or they're no longer the Blackpool Combat Club. I like to call them the
Yeah.
Moxley Crew, but that's not an official thing. So whatever the
Moxley.
remnants of the BCC are, and so you've got an entire budding new faction versus one Darby Allin,
Yeah.
and so I'm thinking, this isn't going to go well for him. Um,
It didn't.
it ultimately didn't, but not for the reasons that I thought. Like the
Yeah.
level of outside interference in this match actually ends up being relatively minimal.
Yeah, and
There were some spots.
unnecessary.
Yeah, there were some spots where Shafir got involved, but nothing that I feel actually turned the match inside out, for Darby Allin. So Allin and Moxley immediately just start like beating the crud out of each other. Like the first move in the match is Allin comes running towards Moxley, and Moxley big boots him like completely out of Darby Allin's boots. Like he hit him so hard that his mouth just immediately started to bleed to start the match.
Yeah.
And for a large portion of this match, it's Moxley just demolishing Darby Allin. But and there's some spots where Shafir takes some cheap shots, and there's a point in the match where it looks like they're really gonna like give it to Darby Allin, and that they remove the protective covering outside the ring, between the ring and the entrance ramp. And Shafir, like, apparently really dislikes the protective covering because she went the extra mile to, like, Hercules the protective mat, like, out
Yeah.
of the arena, like, showing off that I guess she's super strong.
Strong like
And
bull, apparently. Good for her.
and I'm not
Good
gonna
for her.
lie, Marina Shafir is jacked now. Like, she is looking very, very powerful.
She ate the old version of herself.
Yeah, and so for a brief moment in time, it looks like Moxley's going to hit Darby Allin with a Death Rider on concrete, and we're like, oh no, this is going to be bad.
Yeah.
But
Even the
Darby ends up,
audience. What was the audience
yeah,
chanting? You
I don't,
can't kill him.
yeah, don't kill him, yeah, don't kill him. But what ends up happening is Darby Allin counters out of that Death Rider, and but it ends up, I think, resulting worse because he pushes Moxley into some ring steps, and then he goes back into the ring and hits a suicide dive on Mox, or tries to, but Moxley like totally takes a page out of Samoa Joe's book and just moves out of the way. So in effect, Darby Allin at very high speed just dives out of the ring on concrete.
Yeah.
And it's like, this dude is trying to die in the ring.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh
I
my
guess
God.
technically outside the ring, but you
Outside.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
It got so much worse though.
yeah, it does, because then after picking up the splattered Darby Allin, Moxley
Ugh.
then like X-plex, I think might be the best way. Yeah, I think it was basically an X-plex. Like he set him up for almost like a vertical suplex, but released it and just sent him crashing back first onto the ring steps.
Oof.
And so
God,
now
that
Allin has just taken some brutality.
I felt that one in my spirit. In my socks.
Yeah, those are some of those hits that like some part of you feels sympathy pain. Like it shoots up through my legs. I'm like, oh
Yes.
God.
Oh goodness.
Um,
It looked painful.
yeah,
Um,
I don't know how Allen recovers from some of his matches. Like he must just be living that Advil life or something.
yeah. Uh, so after that, Darby surprisingly is not dead. Um, they,
Surprisingly.
yeah, surprisingly they start doing just striking each other open palm strikes. Uh, and then Allen Darby he's about to go up for a coffin drop. Uh, off the top turnbuckle or whatever.
Yep, but
Um,
he ultimately lands lovingly in Moxley's
lovingly
arms.
into Moxley's arms, who just goes in for a sleeper. Uh, and Darby Allin's like, ah!
Yep.
He gets away from it. Does he try to do it again, or I can't remember? I think I remember Darby and Moxley getting back up on the top rope
Yeah.
because
Yeah, they
Darby
do.
bites him.
Yep. Allen ends up getting Moxley on the top rope and bites him, and I think is trying to set up for a superplex.
Mm, yeah, that didn't work out.
No, because on top of Moxley kind of fighting back against it, you then have Marina Shafir jump up onto the apron, which distracts Allen just long enough for John Moxley to hit Darby Allen with an avalanche. They said avalanche Death Rider, but it really looked more like just a straight up avalanche DDT, but it looked brutal.
yeah.
And that, of course, opens the door for Moxley to get the pin and win the match. Um, so you end up with John Moxley winning the match, which grants him, and I believe, an AEW World Championship opportunity at upcoming Wrestle Dream.
Yeah. Me think so.
Yep.
Uh,
But we didn't get to really go into that or celebrate for very long because shortly after the match, when Moxley is, briefly kind of celebrating and strutting around the ring, from out of the audience, Brian Danielson emerges wearing like a hoodie, and I'm not 100% sure what he had in his hands. I think it was a necktie, but
or
he
something,
proceeds
yeah.
to
Something
try
kinky.
to murder John Moxley. Like he throws the necktie garrote style around Moxley's throat and starts just choking the life out of him, which
Yeah,
is
he's
payback
choking my
for
man out.
Moxley
Yes.
doing the same thing to Brian with, I guess, a plastic bag over the head.
Yeah.
Um, and in short order, Shafir and the other members of the Moxley crew make their way out, Claudio Castagnoli and Pac. And they're trying to get Danielson to relent. I mean, this is after Shafir like jumped on Danielson's back and was trying to hit him with like a sleeper or a choke out, and
Yeah.
it was having zero effect.
Zero
Like
effect.
Danielson was just glued to Moxley trying to
I
choke
think
the shit out of him.
Yeah, I think what she did was somehow give him some more momentum or strength to tie. He started rapping whatever he had in his hand more so around
Yeah, yeah.
around his neck. Like this is not happening, lady. I'm taking this
No,
entire head with me.
it really did take like all of them, like Claudio and Pac, to come out there and actually pry Danielson off of Moxley.
Yeah.
And
Now people
Danielson had,
say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. But people say that when they I've seen a lot of commentary where people say that once they pulled Danielson off of Moxley, that they started beating him up. But no, I didn't see that. I saw them holding his legs and whatnot and trying to keep him away, but I didn't see
yeah.
anybody strike him at any time. It's almost like they're
No,
preserving him for the match between those two, which would make sense because that's what BCC would do.
well, and I don't think they really had much of an opportunity because Danielson was feisty, right? And so it took all three of them just to
Yeah.
get him off of Mox. And it took Mox a while to like get that tie off of him because Danielson had wrapped it, like you said, around him pretty good.
Yeah.
So Mox is just like sitting there trying to like not be dead, and all three members of the Moxley crew are just kind of like trying to get Danielson away from him more so than beat Danielson down.
Yeah.
But we
And
we
there.
don't
Sorry. Go ahead.
we don't end up with a whole lot of time for that to go anywhere before out of the back comes Private Party. Um,
And Commander.
and Commander, and they start going off on the rest of Moxley's crew.
Yeah.
And so Private Party and Commander get their shots in on Castagnoli and Pac, while Moxley and I think Shafir are mostly trying to just get Moxley out of there. And so it becomes a situation where Mox and his crew are mostly trying to escape, and you're left with Private Party and Commander with Bryan Danielson in the middle of the ring, and I don't know, did the music start at that point or come in later? But you basically get Danielson grabbing the mic
Yeah.
and says to Mox and his crew, "You wanted war? Well, I declare war." And he goes on to reiterate that Mox can face him at Wrestle Dream. And he said that's where he's going to kick Moxley's fucking head in. And we get Final Countdown playing while Danielson
Again.
and Private Party and Commander are all standing defiantly in the middle of the ring while Mox and his crew are fleeing through the crowd. And it was pretty good. To that ends up bringing the show to a close to a final countdown, and that's really
Yeah.
good.
And that was pretty much AEW's Dynamite.
Grand Slam.
Grand Slam Dynamite. Sorry. And the
And
Grand Slam it was. Yeah.
it was the grandest of slams. Again,
Mhm.
I mean, AEW put on this show, so I have faith in them being able to put on more of this kind of thing. But man, do I kind of wonder, like, is Saturday's Collision Grand Slam going to be able to hold a candle to this just like main event after main event after main event, with one noted exception? Like, because
We
these
shall
were
see.
all of the matches with the exception of Mariah May and Yuka Sakazaki. Every single match on the card for this particular Grand Slam could have been the main event that could have carried any other show. It could have any of them could have been the main event to one of their pay-per-views.
Yeah.
So this was absolutely amazing to watch. Like this was happening on Dynamite, and that there were so many just main event caliber story arc and just wrestling matches.
Yeah.
And so, without question, my review for Dynamite Grand Slam is that it's top tier.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would give it a 9 out of 10. So yeah, that's top tier.
Yep,
And I gotta
absolutely.
take the 1 point away for the I'm not gonna beat the dead horse anymore. A 9. Great
Yeah.
show.
No,
Top
and
tier.
even referencing that particular match, again, it wasn't that it was a bad match, it's just that it was relatively mediocre in the face of so many amazing matches. Like
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
there's so much more that could have and should have been done with that match that wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, this Dynamite Grand Slam was the thing to watch, and I guarantee you I'm going to be waiting on bated breath to see what they pull out in Collision. And it's Grand Slam. This is just a really cool event where it's almost like a sampler pack, right? Like look, this is what AEW can do. Just in case you were ever not sure if you wanted to, pick up a pay-per-view from them, here's they're giving it away as a free sample. This
Yeah.
is what we can bring to the table if you would like to join us for one of our pay-per-views, if you'd like to join us perhaps for Wrestle Dream. And oh man, just some of the best stuff. And I have to give them a lot of credit. Not that the in-ring action did not stay amazing. It was. In every one of the matches that I would say is a marquee match, the wrestling was fantastic. You got a wonderful showcase of variety of styles. That opening
Mm.
match between Daniel Bryan and Nigel McGuinness was like a clinic on technical wrestling and some crazy stuff that Nigel brought to the party that I had never seen before. Then you have Hook and Roderick Strong, which was a clinic like Taz said, it was the Messiah of the backbreaker versus the Sensei of suplex. And then on top of that, on top of the fantastic wrestling, each of those two matches had a really strong, like, kind of storyline drama perk to them, right? We had the buildup of Nigel McGuinness wanting to finally, one last time, settle this rivalry that happened between him and Brian Danielson, sorry, back in Ring of Honor like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Then in Hook's match, we kind of were surprised by it, but you saw some real shows of respect on the end of that match from the Undisputed Kingdom and Roderick Strong. And then you got the retirement of the FTW championship and a real cool father and son moment. So that was wildly unexpected. I didn't know any of that was going to happen, and it all happened at the end of the match, which was a banger of a match. So
Yeah.
it's not just the in-ring wrestling that is carrying it now. The stories and the characters are starting to get real good. Um, you have, the Darby Allin and John Moxley match where, there's not a ton of heat between Mox and Allin, but they did build some heat between Allin and Moxley, and the real heat came in the form of Daniel Bryan striking back against John Moxley's seemingly unprovoked, like, super heinous attack on him at All Out.
Yeah.
So that had a lot of driving storyline to it. And you even got some, like, on top of what I think just on pure wrestling action alone is the match of the night, which would be the tag team match between the Young Bucks and Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. On top of that just being a banger on its face, and they definitely delivered on that front. You also got the added drama of the Don Callis, family issues, where Don Callis presents Fletcher with the screwdriver, and Fletcher seems like he's willing to do it, right? Like, because he wants
Mm-hmm.
those belts.
Yeah.
And, instead of it going, now we've changed the dynamic because now you have some tension between Fletcher and Ospreay, and the fact that Ospreay is not willing to resort to certain things or doesn't feel it's necessary. And because I kind of agree, I think Fletcher and Ospreay were on their way to winning that straight.
Yeah.
But it creates that wonderful tension of, like, Fletcher wanted to do whatever it took, and if I anticipate some comments like Osprey's like, we didn't need to resort to that, and Fletcher's like, well, it's easy to say, you've got gold around your waist, where's mine?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a thing, and just tensions there. So on top of an already amazing in-ring match, you now have this extra drama between, the Don Callis family and Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay and, Ospreay and Callis. So you get all of that added to that. So
Yeah.
they've really gotten good at, in with, again, with, one sore thumb example where they haven't, they've really gotten good at mixing their in-ring action, which has always been their selling feature, with an increased capacity to do some good storytelling and character building stuff, where they really bring out the drama to go with all of that over-the-top in-ring action. So
Yeah.
I have to give AEW a lot of credit. I mean, here recently, it's just been knocking it out of the ballpark.
I agree.
All in,
Yeah.
all out, this Grand Slam. It makes me really hyped for not just Collision's Grand Slam, but I'm already keenly, like, interested in what might happen at Wrestle Dream. So this is fantastic. I mean, AEW aces, now just work hard on your women's division and the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So that's more or less my summary and final thoughts, in general with AEW, and especially for this absolutely amazing Dynamite Grand Slam. What were your takeaways?
Well, that was pretty much it. I feel like I said mine before you said yours. Um,
Oh, fair enough.
uh,
Fair enough.
yeah, and I just honestly feel like this was a really good, um, overall, just a really good show, and I'm excited for Saturday. I hope it can keep up this momentum, keep that same energy. You know what I mean?
I absolutely do, and I am also optimistic that they can. Um, they've been doing a real good job of it so far.
Yeah.
So there you go. That has been our podcast and our review of AEW Dynamite Grand Slam that aired yesterday, Wednesday, September 25th. And I want to thank everybody who listened, and hopefully you'll join us for our next upcoming podcasts.
Do it.
Um, on that note,
Do it.
I'll roll the outro.
Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Top Tier Wrestling. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest AEW and WWE news and shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media for updates and to join the conversation. Until next time, everyone, remember, wrestling is always better when it's top tier.